What's up everybody, King of Fomo here coming at you with your daily crypto update. In this video today, we're going to be talking about EtherOrcs yet again. I'm going to go more in depth onto how to play this game and why I think this is a revolutionary, groundbreaking smart contract. Before I do that though guys, make sure you head on over to my Patreon page. This is where you're going to get the juiciest of juicy information. A lot of the good stuff is going to be when you get access to my Discord community. A lot of people will be talking about this stuff before I even see it, so it's definitely a nice place to get access and get plugged into projects early on that Discord page. Also, you get access to almost all of my videos up to 2 to 3 days early if you are a Patreon member. So getting straight back into it, this EtherOrcs thing, I talked about it yesterday, and we'll talk about kind of where I think this project is going to go. But first, let me give you a refresher on what this thing is. So keep in mind, guys, after I give you the refresher, or maybe before that, I'm not telling you guys to FOMO into EtherOrcs right away and buy as many of these things as possible. This is more just a guideline to help you understand where these NFTs can go in terms of kind of how they're going to be developed and how they're going to be used and how they're going to be built, because the NFT space is really quite new, and seeing these projects implement these types of contracts to do stuff like this where you can actually play a game and level up your character entirely on the blockchain is brand new. And there's going to be a lot of projects, I think, that are going to emulate EtherOrcs and potentially do even better than them if they can get the formula right. And we'll talk about other products that I've spoken about in the past as well. I know some of you guys are curious about things like Loopy Donuts, etc., etc. So I'm going to try to get to all of that. So, like I said, refresher of EtherOrcs, this is their OpenSea page. Currently, their floor price is about 3.04 Ethereum. In my last video, it was a little over, I think, 4.6 Ethereum, 4.5 Ethereum floor price. So it has dropped, and I do expect this floor price to go down maybe a little bit more before we see some pretty massive rebounds, potentially from EtherOrcs. And I'll give you the reasons why in a second. But first of all, let's give you a refresher on kind of what these things look like. You have a lot of different orcs with a lot of different objects. Now, kind of the revolutionary part is the ones that you're seeing right now, they don't have to look like this forever. By playing the game, you can change the way that your character looks on the blockchain, and you can, level up depending on what you're doing. So that's kind of the first thing here. This is a user interface, a fan-made user interface to see kind of what you can do with your orc. All of this stuff can be done directly on the smart contract, so you don't need to have the website to do any of this stuff. And all of it is explained actually in their Discord. So make sure you head on over there if you guys want to really dig into the details on how this thing works. But I'm going to try and break it down for you pretty easily. So first of all, the website's the easiest to use. However, I would highly recommend that you still go to the Discord and learn how to do the smart contract stuff. They go in depth about exactly how to do that, so I'm not going to baby you through this particular method right here. But I will say this, the gas fees that are calculated by interacting directly on the smart contract may be a lot cheaper than interacting over here on the website right here. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of the options that you have here. One option that you have is to train your EtherOrcs. So by training your EtherOrcs, you can level up and change the way that your character looks. So if you guys watched my last video, my EtherOrc looked pretty plain, just like this guy right here, green guy with what they call a pleb staff. And after about a day's worth of leveling up my EtherOrc, I was able to change it into this right here. So this is what my character looks like right now. As you can see, he's a little bit more beefy. He's got more than just a little bit of a stick, and the properties, the picture, everything really changed with this guy. So the benefits to leveling up your orc in terms of training it is your farming happens a lot faster, and farming is where you can kind of make money with the EtherOrcs or be able to sell the fruits of your labors from training. But training is not going to get you anything theoretically. Now, in actuality, I do think that training is probably a little bit more lucrative than farming at the current moment, and I'll talk about that. It's speculative, but theoretically, training doesn't really do anything except make your orc stronger and be able to farm faster. Now, the second option that you have here is farming. So by farming with your orc, you can send your orc out to the farming fields and they'll generate what's called Zug tokens. So these Zug tokens are necessary for you to get more orcs or to mint more orcs. And you know, it's becoming harder and harder over time to mint orcs. So, you know, when this thing first came out, you only needed 4 Zug to mint an orc. Then you need only 8 Zug to mint an orc after a while. So let's take a look at that. So we can go over to the announcements page right here on their Discord, and you can see right here that just a little bit earlier today they announced that 1,000 orcs have been minted using the Zug token in the entire ecosystem. So that means that the price to mint more orcs has increased from 8 Zug to 12 Zug. So now you can kind of understand why it's valuable to have an orc that can farm faster rather than just farming right away, because a lot of these orcs, and I'll show you guys right here, a lot of people decided to just farm right away and not train their orc at all because they wanted more orcs. And if you do that, your orc becomes very, very weak in terms of generating Zug. Later on, when you're going to need 12, 24 Zug to get a new orc, it's going to take you weeks, if not months, to get enough Zug to mint that orc. Now, vice versa, on the opposite side, if you're training your orc, you're not going to get any more orcs. But the second you decide to stop training and go to farming is when you're going to farm faster than everyone else who decided to farm in the beginning. And you're going to be getting Zug a lot faster, so you'll get those later orcs much more easily than everyone else who decided to farm and not train their orcs in the beginning, and they have the basic orcs, all right? Now, the last option that you have here is pillaging. So as you're training your orc, it's going to level up. Now, calculating that level, I'm not going to get into that too much because it's a little complicated. A lot of this stuff you guys will find on the Discord. Again, go there. But the short version is, if you want to see kind of what your orc has done, the rule of thumb is kind of to go over to OpenSea, hit this refresh button right here, refresh metadata, and everything should update within the next couple of minutes to show you what your orc looks like, how it's changed, what its level is. Everything should be correct here. If not, go over to the Discord for more help. But like I said, pillaging is that option right there. So after your orc is trained up and has gone up to level 1 or level 3 or level 6, as you can see these respective areas right here, you can choose to pillage in one of these towns. So by pillaging, that's where you can get new equipment for your orc. Now, obviously, the higher level you are, or the higher level pillaging that you do, the stronger your equipment's going to be and the faster you're going to farm. You need to make sure you do that. If you're at a very high level and you haven't pillaged anything, then your orc's not going to do anything different when it's farming. So make sure that you do pillage. Now, some key tips to keep in mind here: gas fees are still a thing. So I don't think it's really worth it to pillage if you're going to keep training your orc to get to a certain level. If your goal is to get to level 15, do that first, then pillage, then farm, and you can get your Zug tokens. So that's one thing. If your goal is to farm at a high level, then shoot for that, and try not to do too much in between, because you're going to be wasting time if you're jumping back and forth to different stuff. Some other things to note here, guys, is the price of your orc. So like I said before, theoretically, farming is the way to make money with this thing. By farming an orc, you get a brand new fresh orc, and you're able to sell that at floor price, which is 3 Ethereum, which is not a cheap amount. That's close to about, what is that? Close to about $10,000 for that single orc that you farmed and were able to produce just from that farming. Now, here's kind of where things get tricky. These orcs that you're seeing right here that are not leveled up, they're not going to be worth much in the next 10 to 15 days because, again, they're not going to be able to produce the Zug as fast as your high level orcs that look kind of crazy, like we're seeing the ones over here look like this guy and a few other guys. So those are the orcs, like, even though you're not making direct money by generating more orcs, these are the ones that are going to be sought after for people who join the game late and for people who are deep into the game already. You're not going to want to start from scratch a week from now, 2 weeks from now. You're going to want an orc that can do some damage a couple of weeks from now. So that's where my kind of strategy comes into play. And again, you guys can do your own thing. If you're leveling up your orc and you're trying to get to, the castle or the dragon slayer level 15 or level 25 and get some good equipment, I think that in the long run that's going to pay off potentially more, because the price that you're going to see right here, you can sell your orc for a lot higher than the floor price if you have a premium orc with premium equipment. And things get a little more complicated too. You also kind of want to try to snipe and get some of these higher level pillagings for some rare items. Those rare items can only be allocated to a certain number of orcs, which will bring your orc up even higher in terms of price. So it's up to you about how you want to do this. And lastly, especially if you can only afford one orc like myself, if you can't get a bunch of these things, farming probably isn't the way to go, because the rate in which they're being produced right now means that you probably won't be able to mint an orc. Your single orc is probably going to farm too slow to keep up with the increasing rate of Zug necessary to mint an orc. So again, if you only can purchase one, the best option probably is to train up your orc. Make it nice and strong for people who have multiple orcs or people who want to jump in the game, and sell it at a premium price if that is your thing. Now, there's so much more to be said with this. The game can expand even more. They're already talking about that in the Discord, talking about adding things like mounts to EtherOrcs to do even more with it. So, I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to smart contracts like this, but that's what I'm on the lookout for. Like, I'm on the lookout for more games and stuff like this that can evolve and become something that you can really mess around with, instead of just looking at and improve your standing, instead of just crossing your fingers on your first mint and either being screwed over or being lucky. This is a smart contract where you can kind of earn your way to the top and through hard work and dedication, rather than just getting lucky with a mint in the beginning. So that's EtherOrcs. Again, if you guys are in my Patreon group, I'm sure there will be other people and myself talking about similar projects like EtherOrcs coming out soon. And of course, your other projects that have your simple staking, like Loopy Donuts, etc., they still have a lot of potential to do well and to get to an area like EtherOrcs. So keep those on your radar too. I'm going to keep everything as close on my radar as possible. Some other things to note, guys, I will be making another video a little bit later today. It's going to be public, not on Patreon. We're going to be talking about lucky reflections a little bit. So if you guys saw my anti-Ampleforth video a few weeks ago, this is pretty much the same thing. And I'll talk about kind of what's different with this. Some other things to note, I didn't have time to talk about it in this video, but some interesting stuff is coming out of Coinbase. You actually have Coinbase NFTs coming out, which might actually cheapen significantly the cost to getting into this. If everything can happen on a centralized platform, you can eliminate gas fees entirely. So that's something that I'm interested in looking at, so keep you guys up to date on that too. But that is everything for today, guys. I'm hyped about EtherOrcs, and again, don't FOMO into any of this stuff. Always do your own research. The floor price can always plummet down to zero. And honestly, another thing that I'm looking at is, as people start to kind of realize and understand they might have made a mistake not training their EtherOrcs, I think the floor price might go down a lot. And then once things get even harder to acquire here in EtherOrcs, I think the floor price will start to shoot upwards. And once new stuff gets built, there's just a lot of things that can happen in terms of the growth with this project, potentially. That's the keyword, guys. Highlight it, underline it, star it, is potentially. These things can, there's so much that can happen in the positive and negative direction with all these NFTs. So you gotta stay plugged in to really know what's gonna happen with all this stuff. That's everything for today, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, check out my Patreon when you get a chance. Peace out.